You're also going to need to be familiar with the minimum hardware requirements for the 3 operating systems that are covered on this exam. And we're talking about Windows XP, Windows Vista, and Windows 7. I'm going to show you a chart here to make learning these very easy. You just need to memorize this and just get to where you can reproduce this chart on a piece of paper. And then when you get there to take your exam, before you actually start the exam, reproduce this chart on the little piece of paper or the little write-on wipe-off board that they give you that you can use during the exam. But just reproduce this before you start the exam, and then it just becomes a reference piece during your exam. Now, I've also put a copy of the chart you're going to see in the working files folder for you, so just print that thing out. The document you're looking for out there in the working files folder is Minimum Hardware Requirements DocX. It's a Word document, and you'll find that in the Chapter 3 folder in the working files. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the various hardware requirements as listed by Microsoft for the minimum requirements for XP, Vista, and Windows 7. For example, CPU. XP is looking for an Intel or AMD 233 megahertz or better processor. For Vista, all versions you need a 1 gigahertz processor or better. And for Windows 7, 1 gigahertz processor or better. For memory, notice this, XP, 64 megabytes. Vista, 512 megabytes for Home Basic and 1 gigabyte for all others. And then on Windows 7, you'll need 1 gigabyte for 32-bit installation and 2 gigabytes of RAM for 64-bit. Now, when it comes to hard disk space, to install XP, you need to have 1.5 gigabytes of free space on the disk. For Vista, notice a slight difference here, 15 gigabytes available. And for Windows, 16 gigabytes for 32-bit and 20 gigabytes for 64-bit. If you remember earlier, we were talking about the difference between 32 and 64-bit and why we needed to go to a 64-bit processor. And you can see it right here in XP. Look how much more simplistic the operating system was. 1.5 gigabytes is what you needed. With Vista, you need 15. You need a lot more memory. You need a lot more powerful processor. And so we needed that horsepower to give us the same performance or maybe even a little better. But you can see that we've really started to demand a lot from our hardware. Now on the display, XP, minimum requirement is SVGA 800 by 600 resolution. Vista is looking for DirectX 9 graphics, 32 megabytes for Home Basic, and that is memory that's resident on the graphics card, 128 megabytes for all others. And for Windows 7, they're just asking for a minimum of DirectX 9 graphics, and they don't mention any kind of onboard memory because if you've got DirectX 9 graphics on a Windows machine, you're going to have enough onboard memory. Now, here's what I would do if I were you. Learn how to reproduce this chart. Now, you can just memorize straight across on each one, or you can create the chart by putting XP, Vista, Windows 7, and these down the left, and then just memorize straight down and just reproduce it out of memory, and then you will have your chart however you want to do this. But make sure you have these handy during the exam because you may see questions where there's different options, different scenarios, different machines that they want to use to give different people hardware, and you're going to have to know the minimum hardware requirements to know if you can do that. This is not hard, but it is a little bit of memorization. So there's hardware requirements, and again, these are minimums, so you're ready for this on the exam.